Jaya Radhe Radhe. Acharya Asadhara Sadushi Shiman. His divine grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swaraj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Harivas. All glories to the sound devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Garanga. Namo Vishnu Bhai Krishna Prasthai Bhutale. Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tenamane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane. Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade Satarane. Om Agyanatimirandasya Garanjana Salakaya Chaksur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakans Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanshina Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Sudha Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapa Turvyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranitinanda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I don't want to spend too much time reading the verse because, chanting responsibly the verse, but I will read the verse. Here we have. Okay. Bhagavad Gita. This is Caitanya-caritāmṛta Ādi-līlā, chapter 1, text number 13. Advaitam Harinadvaitad Acharyam Bhakti Samshanat Bhaktavataram Isham Tam Advaitacharyam Aishvarye Ashraye. Translation. Because he is non-different from Hari, the Supreme Lord, he is called Advaita. Because he propagates the cult of devotion, he is called Acharya. He is the Lord and the incarnation of the Lord's devotees, therefore I take shelter of him. Just a little background. one of the services I have within ISKCON is that I'm the chairman of the Guru Services Committee. I don't know if how many have taken the disciple course? Most of us will eventually take the disciple course. We also have another course called the spiritual leadership course. And in order to become an initiating guru within ISKCON, we have to take that course and pass the test that we're going to give. Now, what I'm going to explain is part of a course, an extension of the spiritual leadership course, which I'll be giving in Mayapur in March. Actually, at the end of February in March. But this particular part will be in March, the beginning of March. And although the philosophy is quite simple, but because we're quite complicated, it's not very easy to understand simple philosophy. In any case, I'm going to try to say, and we have how much time? In 45 minutes, but probably would be better explained in at least 5 days. So, it's a challenge. First of all, I'd like to explain an outline of what we'll be talking about. The first part of it is called faith, which even before Srila Prabhupada presents the Bhagavad Gita, he explains in the introduction the attitude or the spirit that we should read Bhagavad Gita in. And part of that spirit is that we should understand that we're conditioned souls. And therefore our tendency is that we're faithless to some degree or another. Faithless means doubts. After all, if we're covered by darkness, it's very hard to have faith in what's going on in the light. But we should recognize that our predicament is that even we understand something about the Bhagavad Gita, even the preliminary philosophy, namely that we're not this body. And although we have some intelligence to understand it, otherwise we wouldn't be here, still our intelligence doesn't shine enough light on our ignorance to actually dissipate our ignorance enough so that we're not anxiety about the fact that we have to leave this body sooner or later. So that's the symptoms that we should keep in mind, that we're not as elevated as we like to think or as we like others to think. In other words, unless we understand that we can't factually be humble. It's not possible to really be humble and not understand that. So I can go over, probably it'll take some time, the first part, which is Prabhupada's introduction, the beginning of the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, to shine light, what's the spirit of reading the Bhagavad Gita, what spirit we should have, and what spirit we should have when we're doing devotional service too. In other words, we don't have to artificially try to become humble, put our hands together and say, oh, I'm so humble, I'm fallen, kick me. No, we don't have, we're already being kicked. No one has to kick us. Maya's already kicking us. There's no need for anyone else to come along and kick us. Maya does the job very nicely. The second part is to understand what does it mean in this verse, bhakti samshanat, that the Acharya is non-different from Krishna. Because most of us are probably shielded from all these philosophical controversies that go in ISKCON, because most devotees don't even read Prabhupada's books, what to speak of all these controversies. Or maybe that's all they read is the controversies, I don't know. Depends what your mood is. So the second part is explaining how Prabhupada was perfect. What does perfection mean? Bhakti samshanat. And then if I have time, which I probably won't, but that's okay, it's explaining what is the position of our initiating gurus in relationship to Srila Prabhupada. But I can briefly go over that. But to explain it would take much longer. So let me start with if we can understand this, at least we'll be a little bit relieved from our anxiety. Why? Am I not a pure devotee? Why do I still have doubts? Not only when we have doubts about everything. We have doubts about who we are, and we don't know who we are. We don't know who anyone else is. And if we don't know who anyone else is, we don't know who Krishna is. We don't know who our spiritual master is. We don't know who the devotees are. We actually don't really know anything. What we usually know is what we don't know. We don't know. In the sense that we may have Krishna consciousness means experience. As much as we have experience, we're Krishna conscious. And everyone is conscious, so everyone has experience. And by performing devotional service, we get spiritual experience. And that spiritual experience is like a spotlight on showing us what reality is. But because we're in the darkness, the spotlight that we're experiencing may not be sufficient to dispel all the darkness. And therefore, as long as there's darkness, there's going to be doubt. But if we get a higher taste, now a higher taste could be something intellectual, but that's pretty rare. In other words, people can't really survive, even devotees can't survive simply on theory. They have to survive on experience. And that experience is the main experience that helps us survive is called ananda, or bliss, transcendental ecstasy. But although Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to deliver it, but we have our barriers against it. Now, it's not that we're consciously necessarily putting up barriers, but that's just that's how we find ourselves. Because of our conditioned nature, we're conditioned because what we've done in the past, and we can, in that right now, we have the choice to become unconditioned to some extent, or to become more conditioned. That's the choice of the living entity. Either we can act according to the instructions coming in disciple succession and gradually become unconditioned, or we can act according to the senses and our mind, all colored over by doubt over the spiritual existence. And therefore become gradually a little bit more conditioned. And of course, the life of a devotee is usually, who's following sadhana bhakti at least, is that they're going this way towards liberation, and then the mind catches them and they start going the other way towards conditioning. And then they think, well, this doesn't feel very good. Let me go back to the liberation again. Oh, this feels really good. Now I'm liberated. Let me see if I can enjoy a little bit, and we go back towards the condition. Enjoying means, well, I'm hungry, so I should just eat whatever I like and whatever I want, and as much as I want, because I'm liberated. I'm a devotee. There's no karma. It's all karma-free. Besides that, everything is transcendental. Even my stomach is transcendental. It can hold anything. It's unlimited. So that's our fight with Maya. And the only shelter we have is faith. And faith, of course, is the real faith we have is our experience. But still, we have to start with the basic position of understanding what the spirit is of reading Bhagavad Gita, or what is the spirit of performing devotional service, or else we'll get puffed up and we'll think, well, I'm all right. We start going towards the wrong direction. So Prabhupada, he begins the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. Why did he write another commentary? That's the first doubt people have. There are 600 commentaries, or 700 when Prabhupada wrote his commentary. So why did he write another commentary? At this particular point, and even now, Prabhupada was not recognized as a great acharya, at least not in the Western world. Anywhere, actually. So Prabhupada explains rationally why he wrote another commentary. He said, none of the commentaries in English are authoritative. Now, I can spend a whole lecture explaining what authority means. Authority for who? And how do we know if something is authoritative or not? After all, I think we've all been brought up in some Western country or even India nowadays. And we've been presented so many authorities. It's a little bit, that's a challenge to wear this. I didn't do enough, I don't know if I did enough exercises today. Hey. So everyone has an authority. So when Prabhupada points out none of the commentaries are authority, then we can take it that in his mind he has his authorities, just like we have our authorities. And okay, just allow Prabhupada to appreciate his authorities. His authority may not be some Michael Jackson. For some people who like to dance, Michael Jackson is the authority. For some sports people, Michael Jordan may be the authority. For some people who like to watch movies, maybe Marilyn Monroe might be an authority, as an actress at least. So everyone has an authority, and they're judging things according to their authority. Everyone has the authority as the standard. So Prabhupada also has his authority, which he'll explain. And his authority, he says, is those who are presenting the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. In other words, here we have to use our intelligence because the subject matter is the Bhagavad Gita. We're not talking about how to make friends and influence people right now. We're not talking about who's going to win the horse race. We're not talking about who's the best politician. We're talking about the Bhagavad Gita. That's the subject matter that we're talking about. We're limiting it to the Bhagavad Gita. So, and here Prabhupada wants to explain what the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita is. The spirit of the Bhagavad Gita means the essence, what's actually trying to be explained in the Bhagavad Gita. What the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. Before we begin anything, we should understand what purpose am I trying to achieve. Now, of course, every purpose can be more or less narrowed down to three purposes. We only have three purposes, whatever we're doing. So it's quite simple. But if we're doing something, we should see if whatever we're doing is going to fulfill these three purposes. But most of us are pretty unconscious. Unconscious of why we're doing things. And therefore, we don't know if we're really achieving. But we do know, but most of the time we don't achieve what we're trying to achieve. Because we don't analyze before we do something whether I'm going to achieve what I'm trying to achieve. So those three purposes are very simple. Everyone wants to know how to be as happy as possible for as long as possible. No one does anything so they become as miserable as possible for as long as possible. And no one does anything if they think they're going to be happy for as short a time as possible. And no one does anything if they think this is wrong. This will not make me happy, and this will not make me as happy as possible for as long as possible. So bliss, knowledge, and eternity are eternal purposes for the living entity. Now, Bhagavad Gita is also explaining, that's the spirit of Bhagavad Gita, is to help us become as happy as possible for as long as possible. That's why Krishna speaks Bhagavad Gita, not to make us miserable. No one says, read my book and it'll make you miserable. Although most books that we read will make us miserable. And not only books, but nowadays people don't read books, they go on the internet. I heard they don't even go to Facebook anymore. It's too complicated. It's Instagram and what else they have? What's that? TikTok. Sounds like a child clock. Tick tock, tick tock. So what are they doing? They're going to find out what their hero, what their authority tells them, how to become happy as long as possible. And mostly it all boils down to mundane. How to eat. They don't tell you how to eat, actually. They tell you to eat something. Sleep. How to mate. That's especially important in Kali Yuga. How to mate. They don't even teach you how to mate. Just mate. Doesn't matter how you do it. Just do it somehow. And of course, there's going to be anxiety. So we have to defend against anxiety. Which pills to take, kill the anxiety. We've got to kill something. Kill our anxiety, kill our enemies, kill time, kill something. So this is the main authorities outside Bhagavad Gita, how to eat, sleep, mate, and defend in different varieties of ways. And Bhagavad Gita teaches us how not to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. So it's not necessarily understood in the right way. But that's the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita, is that only by taking shelter of Krishna can we actually find out how to obtain bliss, knowledge, and eternity. Otherwise, it's only a dream. And literally, this material world is a dream based upon false conception that outside of Krishna consciousness, we can actually find bliss, knowledge, and eternity. But it's a very powerful dream because Krishna has created it. He's created the perfect virtual reality. So Prabhupada gives the example, because that taking medicine, we have to follow the direction written on the label. I think even crazy people do. Crazy people. I mean, most people do that. Even when they're taking drugs, they want to find out from illegal drugs. What are they called? Hallucinogenics. They want to find out from their friends what's the effect of the drug before they take. Most people, some people get so intoxicated they don't care. They usually leave their bodies sooner than later. They want to find out what's the effect of the medicine or the drug before they take it, so they can enjoy it more. So we have to follow the directions written on the label. We can't take the medicine according to our own whim or direction of a friend, as usually people do nowadays. They find out from their friend what's the effect of their drug that they're about to take. It's not a good idea. Nor should we just take any medicine and see what the combinations are, what alcohol and psilocybin and LSD and cocaine, see the interesting effects they'll have on our consciousness. Not a good idea. Must be taken according to the direction on the label or directions given by a physician. I hope we can all agree with that. That we should depend upon authority, because this is a relative. Not every physician is expert, and not every medicine is adequate to treat what we're trying to do. But anyhow, this is a theory. We should be some authority on the medicine, and there should be an potent medicine that actually it's going to do what we're expecting it to do. Not that you take a medicine and your teeth, in order to cure your aspirin, and your teeth turn green. So that's really unexpected. Yeah. Or they fall out. Well, that's even more unexpected. So Bhagavad Gita should be taken or accepted as directed by the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna. So Krishna, he spoke Bhagavad Gita not because he had some time off from his usual occupation. And he decided, well, this is going to be an exciting, rather than watch it on video, I'm going to actually participate in the war. And I always wanted to drive horses, after all, And everyone has a hobby, so Krishna has a hobby of riding on horses sometimes. That's not why he appeared on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Krishna had a purpose of speaking Bhagavad Gita, and it wasn't so that later on his devotees could put it into a book and sell them, get money, and get enough money for prasadam so he can eat every day as the deity on the altar. That was not the purpose of Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita, to sell books and get prasadam. So Lord Krishna, on every page of the Bhagavad Gita, says he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the most controversial part of the Bhagavad Gita. This is what all these 600 commentators, or 700 who wrote this in English, didn't like. Now, they don't mind if he's saying he's God, but not the Supreme God. That's too much. That means I can't be God. If he's the Supreme God, he says I'm God, I can be God, but I can't be the Supreme God now. Because this Bhagavad Gita is taking up that assumption that he's the Supreme God. So he must be really proud and puffed up to write a book about himself. I can't. So most people can't accept it. So they try to make excuses. Yes, there's very good thoughts about karma yoga. There's excellent thoughts about jnana yoga and even Ashtanga yoga. But at the end, when he says you should concentrate on me, they become very disturbed and have to cross Krishna's name out, say Brahman, focus on Brahman. We're all Brahman, which is true. So Krishna's, this is confirmed by great acharyas. So again, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Sankaracharya, Vishnu Swami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Saraswati Thakur. So Prabhupada's taking them as authorities. And why is he taking them as authorities? Because they're consistent with the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says he's God, and they say Krishna's God. So he takes them as authority. And at least in reading the Bhagavad Gita, he's not saying that Ramanujacharya, he knew exactly how to build a nice building or anything. But he was an authority in the Bhagavad Gita because he repeated what Krishna said. And in all other literatures, Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Puranas, Brahma Samhita, Krishna is accepted as God. Now, if we're outside the Vedic culture, and most of us were born, even if we were born in India, we were born somewhat outside the Vedic culture, especially nowadays, then it's not so easy. These are not our heroes. I grew up, and when I grew up, we had baseball cards. You may not be familiar with those things, but we had baseball cards in America, and for 5 cents, you go and you get it. They had gum in it. You weren't buying the baseball card by itself, but it was the allurement to spend money on the gum. And then you collected the baseball cards. They told you how many times the baseball player hit the ball and how many home runs he got. So these are our heroes. But if you go to the store, the candy store, they still have candy stores in Brooklyn? Probably not. Probably. Yeah, anyhow, you go to you won't find baseball cards. You won't find cards with gum in it and the pictures of the acharyas. No one's collecting pictures of our acharyas for our disciple succession. But we're here because we have some faith by some experience that these people may be worthy of taking shelter of. In other words, if we say Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we don't think, well, who are these people? Why should we take shelter of them? What am I going to get from taking shelter of them? So this is really a private affair in one sense. People have some knowledge about these acharyas and some experience in following their advice, their instructions. Therefore, we should take Bhagavad Gita as directed by the personality of God himself. Now, Prabhupada is speaking with conviction, and we're full of doubts. So sometimes this strikes our heart, who's he to tell me what to do? We should take Bhagavad Gita as directed by the speaker itself. But it's just logical. If we're going to read Bhagavad Gita, why should we, and Prabhupada gives another example, that there was a Sahaj, I forget his name. There was one commentary, there was one book written about the Taj Mahal and the emperor, Sahaj something, Sahajman. What do you know who his name is? Okay. So this particular emperor was, there was a famous book written about him, and his son was Aurangzeb. Big, well, not such a nice person, although he's the emperor. So he imprisoned his father. Well, first of all, he killed all his brothers. What's that? No, Akbar didn't do that. He was a good guy. What's that? Sahajan. Yeah, Sahajan. No, he was the good guy, Sahajan. But his son was Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb, he killed his brothers, then he imprisoned his father. And so his father was lamenting. So the question was, who's the real hero in this book? What was the name of the book again? The name of that, Sahaja, what's his name? Sahajan. So Prabhupada writes that actually, apparently, Aurangzeb is the hero, but actually it was Sahajan is the hero. So we have to understand what the author was actually trying to convey in order to understand the book properly, although we might mistake it. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is trying to convince us that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he has his supporters, and we're supposed to be his supporters. But in order to become his supporters, it's not so pure supporters. We're trying to become his supporters. We have to get full realization to be fully his supporter. So what is the method of getting the realization? So Krishna speaks Bhagavad Gita in disciple succession. In other words, our disciple succession is actually people who have understood Krishna perfectly. That's our disciple succession. Otherwise, they'll be lost. It's not a theory to understand that Krishna is God. It should be an experience based upon practical activities that Krishna reveals himself. Then we can actually experience Krishna as God. We can become purely part of the disciple succession, an actual representative of the disciple succession. So Krishna is speaking to Arjuna this supreme secret. It's a secret because we're covered. It's the greatest secret. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that he's time, he's killing everyone. So that's a big secret. No one thinks that, how many people think of God as time, the biggest terrorist in the universe, killing everyone? Even a big terrorist can only kill a few people, but Krishna is in charge of killing everyone. He's through his energies. But that's a secret. Don't go around. That's not what we usually tell people. Take shelter of Krishna, he's a big killer. That comes later on. So Bhagavad Gita is especially meant for people who are trying to become part of the disciple succession. And to do that, one has to become like Arjuna, both a devotee and a friend of Krishna. First of all, we have to become a little friendly towards Krishna. Not that, Krishna, why is he always smiling? Even I'm depressed, he's smiling. What kind of God is that? He's not empathetic at all. Probably if I went up to him and told him, my dear Krishna, I feel depressed, he starts speaking Bhagavad Gita to us, to me. Tell me to chant Hare Krishna, be happy. Anyhow, we have to become friends of Krishna, understand that he doesn't have to come down to our level. We don't have to bring him down to our level in order to become his friend. Get some sympathy from him. I'm crying, and he's still smiling. What's wrong? Is he laughing at me because I'm distressed? Maybe he'll give us a little compassionate glance sometimes. Anyhow, and we have to become a devotee. We have to utilize our energies in Krishna's service. If not, then we're actually on the other side. There's the divine and there's the demoniac. Are we Dr. Jekyll or are we Mr. Hyde? Or are we just like going back and forth? One moment I'm a devotee, I'm dancing and chanting, and the next my tail comes out and two little horns pop out. Ooh. Tucking my tail, cover my hat. Devotees like that. Sometimes they wear dhotis and tilak, and they want to do something that they want to see, and they put on karmi clothes and go outside. No one's going to recognize me. So there are 5 kinds of relationships with Krishna, as we know of: passive, neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental, and conjugal. So everyone has a relation with Krishna. Everyone, whether we know it or not, and that relationship is invoked by devotional service. By the process of devotional service, one can revive one's relation with Krishna. So Arjuna accepted Bhagavad Gita. How Arjuna accepted Bhagavad Gita? In the verse, Param Dhamma, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Pusham, Shasvateva Dam Vijum, Ahustvam Rishya Sarve, Devar Sharanardastata, Asito Devala Vyasa, Swami Chaiva Vivshime. Arjuna says all the qualities about Krishna. Param Brahma, he's Brahman. He's Dhamma, he's the abode of everything. And this whole world is Krishna's energy. Pavitram, he's the purest. He's eternal, Shasvatam, Divyam, he's transcendental. Arjuna just glorifies Krishna. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita should be accepted with the spirit of devotion. But how can we accept it in the spirit of devotion? Most of the times we think, well, I don't really feel very devoted. Sometimes we feel like, what does it mean to be a devotee of Krishna? Am I really a devotee or am I aspiring devotee? If I was a devotee, wouldn't my heart be blossoming with love for Krishna when I see him all the time? Wouldn't I be devoted to the devotees? If I was really a devotee, but we're aspiring. Some devotion is there. Otherwise, how can we do any service whatsoever? One time I wrote to Prabhupada, I sent him some doctrine for his Bhagavad Gita, the little blue Bhagavad Gita. That was the treasure, and whatever money we got from selling the Bhagavad Gitas, we sent to Prabhupada for his book fund. And Prabhupada wrote me back, he said, thank you very much for this contribution of love. So for Prabhupada's vision, just by sending him a contribution for his book fund was a contribution of love. I wasn't exactly overwhelmed with ecstasy when I sent the money, but Prabhupada, he could see the little bit of devotion there, doing the service for him. And therefore, one should not think he's equal to Krishna. Now we may think, I never think I'm equal to Krishna. But then again, most of the time we don't even believe in Krishna. Prabhupada once said that one of the problems in the Hare Krishna movement that the devotees don't believe in Krishna. Now, to some extent, we do believe in Krishna, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But to understand Krishna is not so simple. The source of everything. To know someone who's unlimitedly beautiful, it is not so easy to believe that they can to have experience of someone who has unlimited beauty and who knows everything past, present, future. So we do believe in Krishna to some extent, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But to actually have full faith in Krishna is a different thing. That is only obtained when we come to the platform of meeting Krishna personally. So according to Bhagavad Gita, we should not think Krishna is just a great person, or what to speak of an ordinary person. That Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now here's an important point. So according to the statements of Bhagavad Gita, or the statements of Arjuna, the person who's trying to understand Bhagavad Gita, at least theoretically, we should accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we should put aside this idea, I have to have complete faith in Krishna consciousness in order to do devotional service. But we have to have enough faith that we can theoretically accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's called submission. Now, to pretend that I have full faith and I'm doing it out of devotional ecstasy, everything I'm doing, is hypocrisy when we're not on that platform. We try to pretend that we're some great devotee that we're really not, or even more advanced than we really are. But we have to accept we're going to have doubts. We don't know Krishna, but we have enough faith in Krishna and his devotees that I'm going to do this service. And I'm going to do it with some knowledge that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. I'm going to do it under Krishna's guidance and the guidance of his representatives. I'm not going to try to do it with care and attention. That's my love. Try to do it nicely to please Krishna. So that's called submissive spirit. And submission is the preliminary qualification to understand what Bhagavad Gita is. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. So unless we learn submission, as explained here, not blind following and absurd inquiries condemned, as Prabhupada said, one should not only hear submissively, but one should get a clear understanding through submission, service, and inquiries. So this is deep. It takes consciousness. It takes awareness to understand how to progress in Krishna consciousness. Or, as Prabhupada also writes in the chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita, that even if we're in a bona fide organization, and we have a bona fide spiritual master, still if we're not very intelligent, still if we do everything with love, we render all kinds of service with love, then Krishna within our heart will help us make progress in devotional service. But still, it's an easier process if we have some knowledge. Now, since I have 10 minutes left, something like that, for my other, this is like the first hour of my introduction to the seminar I'm going to give. But let me just go over the other thing, which I think is most important. I'm not going to go over other things which are important. But this verse, Bhakti Samushanat. So that means how the Acharya is propagating devotional service. Our whole society, this ISKCON society, is based on the premise that Srila Prabhupada is the Acharya, specifically the founder Acharya. Now, unless we understand what that means, we're not going to make a very clear connection, a very strong connection with our disciple succession. We may follow Prabhupada's instructions, knowingly or unknowingly, which will connect us. But unless we actually connect with the personality and the example and the instructions of Prabhupada as a person, our firm connection with the disciple succession will not be complete, will not be full. There may be a big powerhouse, but there may be so many wires connected to the powerhouse. Some of them are conveying maybe thousands of volts, and some of them may be conveying just a few volts. So our connection with our disciple succession depends upon what is our understanding of how to connect with that powerhouse of our disciple succession. If it's clear, then we can convey millions of volts. And if it's not so clear, we're only going to convey limited number of volts with our connection. I don't know if that analogy fits completely, but. So, who is Jayadvaita Swami? And well, let me just say, you may not be aware that sometimes people, devotees, I'm talking about devotees specifically, they have a problem with some of the things that Prabhupada said, controversial points that Prabhupada said, and it disturbs these devotees, and many of them are, academic scholars. And academic, I went to college for 4 years. It was the worst period of my life. I mean, first part was all right because I was completely in ignorance, but when I was a devotee and had a little bit of knowledge, it was quite disturbing to me. And it was disturbing to my professors too, because I asked questions that you weren't supposed to ask. All my friends, my professors, I had many professors who were friends, but when I became a devotee, they didn't want to identify with me at all. Especially we used to go Burjan Peru. There's a devotee named Burjan and Vikram Maharaj. We used to go. One time we were in the same class. What's that? Yeah, all three of us. And we had shaven heads. And that was the time when everyone had long hair. So it's quite disturbing to people. See three bald-headed people who were 19 years old or something, 20. In any case, there are academic scholars, even in our society, who put doubts about Prabhupada's ability or Prabhupada's position. That sometimes they say that when he was speaking Shastra, he was absolute. And when he was speaking about controversial topics, I'll just use the names. Women, blacks, the moon, you name it, Jews, Hitler. Then, somehow or another, he was on a different platform. He became an old Indian Bengali gentleman who just was out of date with reality. Socially unacceptable, politically incorrect. Therefore, we have to change his books. We have to ignore him because, old people get a little grumpy sometimes. So this is poison to our devotional creeper. We believe that. If we don't have the proper understanding, so Jayadvaita Swami and Sesrup Maharaj were asking Prabhupada questions. Probably get it. The questions were, sometimes we see the Acharya, we may have doubts about what he's doing. So how are we supposed to understand what he's actually doing? Sometimes it may seem like he's falling asleep. So this is Jayadvaita Swami. This is the Prabhupada, and the morning walk. They know the Acharya, they know everything and they're perfect in everything, but sometimes from a material viewpoint, we see some discrepancies. Just like we think that, Prabhupada. Because material viewpoint, the viewpoint is wrong, therefore you find discrepancies. This takes some humility. And believe me, if you go to a university, especially a big university, they don't teach you, that's not the primary subject matter, is how to develop humility. So we think that we have, so we should think that we have the defect. My God, how is that possible? I got a PhD, I got an MD, how can I be defective? I'm authorized. And I'm an initiating guru. My followers think I'm as good as God. I don't want to disappoint them. Be too humble. Prabhupada, yes, Acharya is explained. Bhakti Samshana, as you see here, Bhakti Samshana. This is throughout Caitanya-caritāmṛta. One who is preaching the cult of devotional service, he's Acharya. Then why should you find any discrepancy? Mind you, Prabhupada's talking to those who were just, previously, a few years ago, were Aborigines. And inquiring from them, why should you find any discrepancy? So, because we're Aborigines, that's why. Just see, for instance, sometimes the Acharya may seem to forget something or not to know something. So from our point of view, if someone has forgotten, that is. So here's a legitimate concern. That's why we think the Acharya is not perfect. Prabhupada, no, then, an imperfection. Prabhupada, that is not then you do not understand. The Acharya is not God, omniscient. What? The Acharya is not God? He's not omniscient? When I was talking to Indradu Maharaj one time about disciples, and he started to mention to me about disciples he had in Russia. One disciple came up to him and said, after the initiation, and asked, he said, Guru Maharaj, can you tell me what my name means? And Indradu Maharaj said, yes. He said, what name did I give you? He said, Krishnadas. Let that sink in. Another time, Indradu Maharaj told me he was at a festival and some disciple of his, someone came up and gave him a nice donation, big donation. And Indradu Maharaj said, thank you very much. He said, what's your name? And the devotee said, what? Guru Maharaj, you don't know my name? And Indradu Maharaj said, well, I'm not omniscient. Guru Maharaj, you're not omniscient? He said, no. And then the disciple said, could I talk to you later? There are different conceptions, obviously. He is a servant of God. His business is to preach bhakti cult. That is Acharya. That is the perfection. Prabhupada, that is the perfection, Hare Krishna. So we have a misunderstanding what perfection is. Prabhupada, yes, perfection is there. How he is preaching the bhakti cult, that's all. So Prabhupada was preaching the bhakti cult. So he didn't necessarily all the time, what everyone said, however controversial it might have been, immediately contradict them and get into an argument over whether we went to the moon or not, or whatever, the position of women. Prabhupada talked to most people according to time, place, and circumstance in order to inject Krishna consciousness. If we want to understand Prabhupada's opinion on any subject, we have to go through everything he said about it and put it together in relation to our philosophy and then try to assimilate it. Otherwise, we'll misunderstand, because Prabhupada said different things about mundane subjects in different circumstances, and he said different things about spiritual subjects in different circumstances. But we have to assimilate the knowledge to understand it. And, this is throughout our scriptures. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for instance, Prabhupada writes that nectar of instruction, which I'll finish here, I'll be able to go into the other part. This is verse number 5 at the end of the last paragraph. Well, let me go to the second last paragraph. Let me go to the third to the last paragraph to summarize. Prabhupada said that one should accept the Bhagavad Gita in its totality. That's a very pronunciation. Most of us think, well, of course I accept the Bhagavad Gita in its totality. But it's not necessarily so. For instance, when it says pure devotee, obviously even advanced devotees or relatively advanced devotees in our society don't necessarily accept the Bhagavad Gita, everything it says, and especially Prabhupada's purports. So then Prabhupada said that when one realizes his spiritual identity, not that's on the platform of bhava, one realizes one's spiritual identity. And one enters into the spiritual identity, the platform of prema, we have to go through a few other stages before we get there. And when one understands that there's no difference between Krishna and his name, I mean, how many devotees chanted rounds today with complete experience that Krishna was, whenever we said Krishna, Shrimati Radharani, Hare, Krishna and his pastimes were just flowing, we were actually there in Goloka Vrindavan, participating in the pastimes. Anyone had that experience today throughout their japa period? The Krishna's name was completely non-different. And we had one who was completely dedicated. His every move, his every thought, his every word is simply dedicated to spreading Krishna consciousness. That's the platform of Uttama Adhikari, the Acharya. And the Uttama Adhikari is the only one who should actually accept all contributions from his followers. Otherwise, you may not know. Otherwise, if he imitates an Uttama Adhikari, then he's sure to fall down. His devotional service will become slack. And then Prabhupada in the last paragraph, he writes that one should know one's other position. Easier for us to figure out whether one is a Uttama Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, or Kanistha Adhikari. We're always discriminating, looking at everyone, trying to figure out who they are, what they're doing. It's just, we've been doing that since time immemorial. Is this a man or a woman? Nowadays it's hard to know sometimes. It's difficult. But we're always looking, that's the first thing most people used to notice, but now it's difficult. So we're always discriminating. So we should be able to understand by knowledge and experience who's on what level, so we can know how to exchange the loving exchanges with them appropriately. One should know one's own position, because if we don't know our own position, we won't know who's higher and who's lower, and who's on the same level, and what would be the appropriate way of exchanging loving exchanges with them. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given us a hint that one can know an Uttama Adhikari by his ability to convert many others to the platform of devotional service, make others into Vaishnavas. Not just by initiating them or getting people, but actually by their qualities, they've actually become Vaishnavas. Then Prabhupada writes, an intermediate devotee, a neophyte devotee, or an intermediate devotee can also make disciples. But such disciples should be on the same level, and it should be understood that they cannot help their disciples advance through their insufficient guidance. Does that mean they don't give any advancement? They don't give any guidance? No, it means that to come to the platform of prema bhakti, to have a clear path, as Prabhupada writes, therefore one should be careful to accept an Uttama Adhikari as one's spiritual master. So we may have, just in summary, we may have many different spiritual masters in our society who are representing Srila Prabhupada. We may have many different Diksha and Shiksha gurus who are representing Krishna Prabhupada. But it should be understood by everyone, especially by them, that they cannot help their disciples advance very well due to their insufficient guidance. Therefore, one should accept an Uttama Adhikari as one's spiritual master. And who's that Uttama Adhikari? When one devotee asked Prabhupada, it says in the nectar instruction that we should follow a resident of Vrindavan. So who's that resident of Vrindavan? Prabhupada said, I am that resident of Vrindavan. So this is theory, because we're in a realm where we're half asleep. Therefore, all we can do is accept theoretically things by faith. Faith is a very important thing for advancement. If we have no faith, we're finished. We have some faith, we can go forward, and that faith should be for Krishna and should be for our founder Acharya. That's what this movement is about. If we don't have faith in Krishna, then find another society. If we don't have faith in the founder Acharya, then find another society. You can have faith in the person who's directing it. But if we take Krishna out of the society, if we take Prabhupada out of the society, we don't see our initiating gurus in relationship to Prabhupada, that we accept someone as our initiating guru and we follow his instructions, not blindly, because we understand, we have faith that they're connected to Krishna and to Prabhupada, to our founder Acharya. They're not independently leaders of our society. But anyhow, this is a whole other point, which is very important. I'll just tell the last point. This is my last point. In 1977, in October, before Prabhupada left this planet, then some gentlemen came to see Srila Prabhupada, the politicians actually, the chief minister, I believe, of Madhya Pradesh, and some other gentlemen came. And they asked Prabhupada privately, who will be the next acharya, the next leader in your movement? And Prabhupada's answer was, I haven't appointed anyone as the next leader. All my disciples will be the next leader, as much as they've understood and followed this process. So as Tamal Krishna Maharaj said in Topanga Canyon one time, he said, actually the biggest mistake in our society is that we were told that Prabhupada appointed 11 acharyas. But Prabhupada didn't appoint anyone as acharya. If he would have appointed someone as acharya, he would have talked about it day and night. It would have been all over. He appointed devotees who could take up the position of initiating, but what are they doing? They're initiating devotees into a society of devotees to participate in helping people become devotees and cooperating with those who are on the same level and to serve under higher authority. That's what initiation means. Not that we create little guru groupies that will simply kill our devotional service. If we don't develop the proper discrimination of seeing who's superior to me and taking guidance from them and taking their example of how they're manifesting Prabhupada in their activities, if we don't cooperate with those who are on the same level of accepting our Prabhupada, if we don't help the innocent people, including new devotees, make advancement in Krishna consciousness according to how Prabhupada expected us to do so, then we'll be committing offenses against everyone we meet instead of loving exchanges. And the result is our bhakti kripa will be destroyed, and we may live in the society because one reason or another, but our devotional service will be very difficult to develop, our bhakti kripa. So we don't take shelter of the root, understand Prabhupada properly, and understand everyone else in relationship to him, our Diksha gurus, our Shiksha gurus, all the other devotees in the society in relation to Prabhupada, then we'll simply be lost. Yasya deve para bhaktira tatha deve tesa guru tasyate karita kashante mahatmanaha. Only those who have faith, full faith, which we're trying to develop in both Krishna and the Acharya, all the imports of devotional service, actually, all of Krishna consciousness is actually revealed to one. Otherwise, these things will remain hidden. So I'll stop there. Thank you. I cannot adequately explain this properly. Sorry. So forgive my offenses if I made any offenses, because it's not possible to adequately explain such a subtle and profound philosophy in such a short period of time. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Okay. Grandhara Shri Caitanya-caritāmṛta ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande.